So happy to have Shannon with us today. We always have people ask us, let's get some hardcore veteran CISOs interviewing, seeing their advice, how they got into the field, and where they see the field going. And today we have probably one of the best in the business. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome. You know what time it is, my friends. It's time. It is time. Buckle up. Here we go. It is time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. So happy to have Shannon with us today. We always have people ask us, let's get some hardcore veteran CISOs interviewing, seeing their advice, how they got into the field, and where they see the field going. And today we have probably one of the best in the business. Shannon, can you introduce yourself and sort of give a little background? I would say you're a world-class CISO and you're a leader and changing the world on cybersecurity, but I'll let you give a little more background about your experience and where you currently work.
Yeah, well, appreciate that, Dr. E. Appreciate the invitation. I love the podcast. I love your approach.
Let's go with Eric. I don't have to call you Mr. Brewster.
Okay, I'll go with Eric. So
Eric
a little about me.
Eric and Shannon, I love it. Okay, great.
So I'm currently the leader of the information security program, CISO, at LevelBlue. LevelBlue is a new brand in the marketplace, but many have probably heard of AT&T Cybersecurity. We decided to divest that asset, and it was acquired by a company called Willjam Ventures, and we are basically charting a path to the world's largest managed security services provider. Made some recent acquisitions in the marketplace with Strauss Friedberg that was part of the Aon organization and TrustWave. But a little about me, I've been in telecommunications. I started my career in telecommunications, got into cybersecurity through some programs at AT&T that they launched about 10, 15 years ago. They called it Your Path to 2020, looking at where the future was going from a technology standpoint. And I hopped onto the cybersecurity program and kind of the rest was history. Launched a career in the managed security services organization at AT&T, and now I'm a part of the journey to, divest that asset from AT&T and on the mergers and acquisitions train.
Awesome. And the question I always get, because a lot of our listeners are sort of first-time CISOs or people that are transitioning from the technical role to the strategic role. Can you sort of give some advice, like, what was the critical decision-making factor, or what was the key skill you needed to learn when you decided, okay, I've done enough on technical, I've done enough, protecting the front lines, having the packets or the guns or the bullets, whatever you want to call it, in hand, and I want to move to strategy. So what was that shift for you, and what recommendations do you have for somebody who wants to make that shift?
Oh, so I think that's a kind of an interesting story. So I kind of was always drawn to the technical side of things. Started my career in telecommunications, fresh out of school, landed a job. I didn't realize I was landing a job as a telemarketer. But the role brought me into the telco world. And then I was drawn into data networking, just designing networks for customers. And, ultimately that kind of just kept feeding on itself. I ended up going back to school and getting a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity, really kept getting more and more drawn into the technical aspect of it. Maybe how the average person thinks of a cybersecurity person is that guy in a hoodie behind a keyboard, right? The epiphany for me that I really liked leading teams and on being on the strategy side was I decided to leave the organization to work for a pure cybersecurity company that many maybe have heard of, FireEye. And I took a role in the systems engineering group, and I suddenly found myself surrounded by like these really deep technical people. And I was like, I could work my butt off. I'm never going to be that technical, but I really enjoy working with people. I really enjoy leading initiatives and building teams. And so how do I kind of find the right balance there between, understanding the technical fundamentals, but really try to move that forward to have a business impact. And that's kind of where my career took me in that direction.
Excellent. So let's talk about one of the things that always comes up is sort of that seat at the table of earning respect. Because like a lot of times you're coming in and executives, they know they need cybersecurity, but they're sometimes leery of here comes the super techie person. How did you go in and sort of build rapport and respect with the CEO, COO, and board members to have them really accept you as a chief officer and not just view you as a cybersecurity person?
I think the first piece is trying to understand what the business's priorities are and be
Ooh,
able to
yeah,
speak
I
the
love it.
language of
I
the
love it.
business that
You
you're in.
nailed it
Like
right there. Yep.
you're a business enabler. You listen very closely to the words that people use and mirror them back to them, right? And underpin everything that you're saying around what is the priority for this leader, right? And then use their words, even the nuances of the way that they speak. And you can capture that, like having a notebook there and writing down verbatim quotes on how they describe what they're trying to get done, and then adopt that into how you underpin what you're recommending. And really, you're there to reduce the risk and make it easier for them to get the job done.
Yeah. And I think that's a big piece is speaking the right language. Sort of, they don't care about packets and protocols. They care about enabling the business and revenue. Can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit of how you sort of view that role of instead of being the no, no, no person, where you actually say yes, 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 but you do it in a secure manner?
Well, I mean, that starts when like you have to be deeply involved with your team, because you could have the greatest vision in the world and your team might be out there doing exactly what you're trying not to do. Um, so being very close to the rail on what the team is doing, how they're expressing what needs to be done. And then one of the things I do is I have a daily stand up with my team. I'm very close to what they're doing and what their challenges are, and then really trying to get them to see the challenge from the business's perspective, and really trying to codify that value that we are here as a business enabler. So it's not a no, no, no. It's how can we get to yes, right? Like how can we do this in a way that's secure, without slowing the business down too much? Because security is always, it's meant to put some speed bumps in the way, but how do you do it in as frictionless a way as possible? And I think that that's just kind of been something that requires almost, you got to beat that drum all the time. Like what's the right way to manage this risk in a way that gets everyone what they want? And for me, it's good communication, being pausing and listening first. Like when you show up to a call, how, like, because you've got an agenda of how you want something done, but instead of throwing that out on the table first, listen to them and give them a chance to speak first on what they're trying to do. And when you show that you're willing to listen, it totally shifts the dynamic in the room anyway.
No, I love that. Let's go down that path a little bit because we talk a lot about sort of the chief officer
Mm-hmm.
and talking with executives sitting at the board. But the part we also have to realize is being a CISO, you're also a manager and you have to manage the expectations of the technical folks. So how do you work with technical folks? Because I know when I was technical, I look back going for my bosses, I would never have wanted to work for me, right? I was so annoying because it was always about security. It was always about being 100% secure. And it was like, why won't they fix this? Why won't they listen? How do you deal with balancing sort of that risk posture with your security team where you have eager security folks that want to fix everything, but the reality is you can't?
Well, I mean, that is obviously balancing the priorities is a big piece of that, right? And
Yeah.
helping folks set the right agenda, prioritize accordingly. For me, it's speaking in plain business language again, but even with my teams, setting my own ego aside, being willing to ask questions. I think one of the biggest challenges in cyber is folks don't like to admit that they don't know something. And I think
Yeah.
you actually gain more respect, even as a CISO, to say, hey, I really don't remember that acronym, or hey, can you break that down for me a little bit? And you learn a lot just from being inquisitive, and your team learns a lot from each other that they wouldn't, because people, I think, tend to clam up. So how do I create a collaborative environment by my willingness to ask questions about the problem? And it's human tendency to think we know the situation more than we do. And when in reality, we only have a few small data points that we're working off from. So I feel like leading with questions and driving more inquiry around the problem gets people to open up and relax, and then they don't have to show off that they're the smartest person in the room, right?
No, I love that. And that's one of my big things is that smart people know the right answers. Brilliant people ask the right questions. So it's all
Yeah,
about asking
that's a great
questions
quote.
and all those factors and stuff. So let's jump into sort of the importance, because I know everyone's always focused about firefighting and we talk about ransomware and dealing with incidents. But really, to me, the CISO's role, and I think you said it in the beginning, is about that risk tolerance.
Yep.
How do you work with executives and your team to get a right risk tolerance? Because what I find is executives and the security folks want 100% security, but they're not willing to pay for it or do what's needed. So how do you get that right factor of saying, hey, it's okay to have a breach. It's okay to get a compromise. It's okay to not fix all the problems.
It's in many ways, it's about trying to get the business to slow down enough to have a conversation, because there's so much pressure to move faster and faster and faster, competitive pressures, all types of inputs from, the rapid evolution of technology, AI. It's forcing everyone to move faster, maybe than is pertinent in some places, or pragmatic. I think good governance to slow down and say, what is our risk appetite around this? Right? Like, can we define our risk appetite? Can we all get aligned to where we draw that line around whatever that initiative is? And then if you can get some consensus there, I think then you reduce some of the barriers there to being willing to listen, because you've already received agreement from the organization to what we're aiming for from a values perspective, right? You're going to have incidents. I think that, fortunately, I think the culture that we've built well is like, it's no blame, right? Like, this happened, but we're going to work together as a team. We're going to get through it, and then we're going to learn from it. We're going to schedule that lesson learned, an after action report. We're going to document what we can do better next time. And when nobody feels like they're going to be on the firing line for, blame for a situation, then you get people working together to solve the problem, and hopefully just keep driving that continuous maturity.
Yeah, I think that's a great issue where you're talking about the blame game. Because one thing I don't know about you, but frustrates me is it seems like you have these great CISOs that are telling the company they're vulnerable, and then they have a breach and they fire the CISO. How do you go in and sort of mitigate that, where you make them aware of the problem ahead of time, so when a breach occurs, they don't fire you, they actually embrace and promote you?
The way I do that, and this is a cultural shift too, first of all, try to establish yourself as the risk advisor. I'm the advisor here. You're the business owner.
I like
You're
that.
the system owner. You are the risk owner. So you own this risk. You're signing off on the risk. I'm telling you the best practice to mitigate the risk, come to an agreement on what's the appropriate amount of residual risk. But if you can get that mindset that the individuals that you're working with ultimately own the risk of the system that they own and operate, it kind of shifts that. And, you can't just assume that that's the way people feel, right? Like, you have to kind of be explicit about certain things and get alignment. Because if it's unsaid, then, and it still comes up today, right? In certain situations where, oh, well, you're the CISO, you own this. Like, no, I own the strategy. I own the counsel and the advice, but you're the ones who ultimately own the system, and you're the ones managing the system. So I think it becomes a team sport at that point, right?
Yeah. Now, I think you nailed it. It's getting very clear on authority and responsibility, because I think the mistake in many organizations is they want the vice presidents or managers to have all the authority, but none of the responsibility, right? The two go hand in hand, and you sort of got to balance them. So just sort of going back to that transition point, a lot of people go, Eric, I don't have experience. Like, I want to be a CISO, but I've never been a CISO before. How do you overcome that? How do you get your first CISO job? Because the whole game is everybody wants you to have experience, but everybody had their first time. What are your tips or tricks for that first time when you don't have CISO on your resume, but you want to get it?
So this might be unorthodox to say, but if I look back at my career, a lot of times I raised my hand when other people weren't raising their hand because, you look at the situation and a lot of folks say, I don't want that challenge. Right. For me, I was trying to build a brand new program from scratch, essentially as a standalone entity outside of a very mature organization. It was a lot of work to get done. And, I was able to jump in, but I think the real important factor is to understand that, this is almost cliche, but what got you here is not what's going to get you there. Right. And that it's letting go of the need to be the smartest person in the room, the most technical person in the room, and then start embracing other skills that are really, really key at the executive level, which is relationship building, communication. You have to be an incredible communicator to work in this space, or you will be gone, right? Going back to the business enabler piece of it, it's like a lot of folks that work in cyber, I think, get very cut and dry, black and white. It must be done this way. If you can't show flexibility in the approach, then you're going to be seen, is a blocker, and then no one's going to want to work with you. So what actions can you take to have the ability to build relationships across the business, intentionally build and maintain those relationships, and show that you're one that collaborates. For me also, I'll say I had a bachelor's in cybersecurity. I was trying to look at how do I, build that foundation from a credential perspective, degree perspective. And I made a decision to go to get an MBA instead of a master's in cyber. And that is also an enabler to be able to speak the language of business cross-functionally across the entire enterprise. And I think that really supports that type of a transition a little bit more than thinking that you're going to be chasing, very, technical certifications, because your role is to build a team of smarter people around you that are functional experts, and how to make that team work together effectively to help secure the organization. So you need other skills, and you kind of have to let your hand off the wheel from a technical perspective, and embrace that you have to become a fan of your people to get the job done. Right.
Makes a lot of sense. And let's talk about degrees, because I know I'm the same way. I decided to get my terminal degree, a doctorate in a cybersecurity focus area. And everyone's like, do I need that to be a CISO? And my response is no, but I think there's a balance there. So can you sort of talk to the audience of how important is a degree versus getting the knowledge and getting the experience?
I think the experience is always going to be very critical, but in a lot of organizations, you're not going to get your foot in the door without a degree. So I think you have to balance both and map your own career path based on maybe your industry, know the values of your organization. Like I worked at AT&T. I mean, I was told from the beginning, like if you don't have degrees, you're never going to move up the chain at AT&T.
Wow.
So
okay,
that was like my first day on the job. I'll be honest. I hadn't even finished my bachelor's degree when I started at AT&T.
Nice.
And when they hired me, I went through the final interview, and the regional VP, he walked out of the room. He shook my hand. He said, "I'm offering you a job." And then he turned around and he walked out the door, and then he stopped. And I can still remember how he pivoted. And he goes, "Oh, by the way, we don't hire people without degrees here. I'm making an exception for you." And he slapped his notebook and he walked out. And then after that, he became a mentor, and he encouraged me to use the tuition reimbursement program when I got in the door. And AT&T paid for me to finish my bachelor's degree. They paid for the master's degree. So take advantage of those programs if you have them, because it's really surprising to me how many people are in organizations that have these benefits and they don't take advantage of them. It's a missed opportunity, to say the least.
No, I love what you did. I think it's a great lesson to our listeners is be the exception and let somebody else pay for your degree, right? You can go and pay for it now, but you can also let somebody else pay for it when you get that job there. So I think that's awesome. Let's just sort of mix it up a little bit. We're talking a lot about the strategy and the leadership and the management, but I also know you've done an amazing job of really building your brand as a leader. Like I know when people look at you, they sometimes think of you as a CISO, but they also think of you just as an executive leadership. How important is building that brand to becoming a world-class CISO?
Oh, it's really critical, and you've got to take steps to, be intentional about what that brand is. But for me, it's been getting active in the community, taking on those extra responsibilities to help others, and just do it genuinely to help other people, right? There's a lot of people that want to break in. They're looking for an opportunity to network and build community. So somebody had pulled me aside back in, I think, 2018 and said, "Hey, we should start an ISC2 chapter in Los Angeles." And I'm like, where am I going to find the time for that? And but I said yes, because I have a problem of never saying no. And it was a good thing. I mean, throw myself into that. That's great opportunity to build brand, a visibility in your local community. Ultimately, it enabled me to go on. I'm on the ISC2 board of directors itself now, all because of making those investments. So I think the biggest advice I'd say is when you're building a brand, first off, be intentional about it, but also don't be self-serving about it.
So one of the things you said that I really like is there's so many people out there that are like, you have to say no, you have to say no, you have to say no. And I'm sort of with you where by never saying no, you open yourself up to new opportunities. But I know there's also a prioritization that needs to happen. Can you sort of talk a little bit about sort of balancing never saying no with with always saying yes?
Yeah, like I said a minute ago, like I have a problem with never saying no, but I try to
Yeah.
make myself stop and think either A, can I do this? Is there a value in doing this?
Yeah.
And understanding what that is. But even if it's, as a CISO, you get, I hate to say this word, accosted, but you get a
Yeah.
lot of sales reps emails and invitations to things. I try to say yes when I can, because that's an opportunity to meet new people, and it leads to unexpected opportunities. So I would say I would be very careful about just constantly saying no. It it's just gonna reduce your opportunities that you can't see, that there are 2 and 3 and 4 layers removed from the decision you're making right now.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, I'm with you. You never know. A small, minor decision today could be a pivot point for sort of changing your life and changing your career. So let's talk a little bit. I always sort of joke about it, but I don't think we can cover an episode without AI. I know AI gets a lot of hype, and everyone's like, AI is going to replace you. AI is going to do this, and I'm sort of more of it's a tool. It's not a replacement. And I'm sort
Yep.
of from a CISO standpoint. What would you recommend to CISOs on how to embrace and deal with AI for both your team and with the executives?
For me, I'm looking for ways to leverage AI where it makes sense, but also being mindful of reducing my own authenticity. Um,
Yep.
so there's certain areas where I don't really need to be too authentic, and sometimes you can do some great things with the right prompts. So the productivity enhancements, if you don't embrace it, you're going to get left behind, because you're not going to be seen as productive as others who are fully embracing it. I do think there's got to be the right balance, though, because some folks are going so far that you've lost touch with who this person really is, because if you're writing, as an example, if you're writing all your
Yeah.
emails,
Yeah.
right? I never write an email to my team with AI. Never, never,
Yeah.
never, never. I want them to see me as who I am.
Yeah. Be
But if
authentic.
I'm
Yeah.
writing a control statement, leveraging AI solutions for writing a control statement for your SSP, why not? Right? No, you don't need to be an authentic. We're not trying to show who you are as, a security analyst in that work. So find those places where it works as an enabler to make you more productive, but also don't miss out on opportunities to learn and grow. Because I think the brain works in a way that we grow from, and we even have our own insights about how we think by having to hammer out words. And so if we lose that and we outsource that to an AI, I think we're sacrificing more than we think.
Yep. And it's one of those where it's always about evolving and changing, becoming the best version of yourself. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you look back and there were decisions at the time that you made that you're like, yeah, that was a good decision. But maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years later, you look back going, I might have done that differently. So if you were giving advice to your version of yourself 5 years ago on becoming a CISO, what would sort of be that advice of what is a lesson learned or a thing that you would avoid or do differently?
I think the biggest advice is don't withdraw into a silo.
Yeah.
If you're going to get consensus at that level of a leadership role in an organization, you have to have deep relationships wide across that organization, from HR to engineering to operations to marketing. So if you withdraw into a corner and you get so focused on your own work that you're not building those relationships across the business, you're not going to get advocacy within your own organization. And honestly, one of the easiest places to land your first CISO job is probably to move up the ranks within your own organization, because you're known, you're trusted. It's a big decision to bring someone from the outside into an organization that's concerned about cultural impacts to their team, the unknownness of this entity, no matter how well they're known. And then you kind of round that out by building a brand in the industry, getting folks that see and know and understand you and what you bring to the table outside your own company as well. Those will open up those doors. But the more you can, push on that, I think the better. So don't just get in your own work stream and focus on your own work. You got to step back and take the time to get out there and build those relationships cross-functionally in the business.
That makes a lot of sense. And sort of one of those things with the role of the CISO is where they report. I know the old school was CISOs was sort of buried within the organization, report to CIOs. Now you're seeing it switch where CIOs report to a CISO. and even CISOs sometimes moving up into the CEO role. Where do you see the role of the CISO evolving or becoming over the next 3 to 5 years?
You know, I would like to say that it's going to continue to evolve into a more and more senior leadership
Yep.
role, but it's going to require the profession to embrace some of those business skills that we've been talking about. You're not going to get a seat at that table if you're not able to speak the language of business. And I think as a profession, it will continue to be pushed down in the organization if we don't make that leap better, right? And I see it across, almost everywhere. It's very, very rare to see a CISO reporting directly to the CEO. And I think unless it's a very targeted industry, you're probably not going to get recruited to be on a board just because you're a CISO.
Yep.
That would have to be an organization that had very, very stringent security requirements and needed that perspective in one person. But the most expensive real estate in any organization is the board seat. So you need to maximize that seat. And so it can't just be someone who's showing up into that boardroom with one skill, right?
Yep. You got multiple skills. And so let's go back to what you said in the beginning, the importance of communication.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the communication tips or tricks you've learned that you think were very valuable in getting you to where you are today?
Clear communication, bottom lining up front. If my email turns into more than 5 sentences, I pick up the phone. Nobody has time to read like paragraphs and paragraphs in an email. So your ability to cut right to the quick, if you will, on the challenge in an email, since your organization tends to be so email heavy. I think also being mindful that the way you communicate in every interaction is going to be felt across your team, right? So you have to be positive in as many interactions as you possibly can. And if you're intentional about it, you can actually increase the morale on your team. One leadership skill that I think is really powerful is third-party compliments. Talking great about someone else on your team to someone else when they're not there. Yeah. Like it gets back to them, and people start to really feel that you really believe in them with something as simple as, talking great about someone to someone else, It's just some stuff.
I love that, because people always like, don't talk behind people's back. And I'm with you. Talk behind people's back, but in a positive way, right? Yeah. Not in a negative way. Don't trash them, enforce them, lift them up, and embrace them. So I love that. And it's always one of those where sort of time flies when you're having fun. But so as we sort of start to wrap this up, what is sort of one piece of advice you would give to new CISOs or up and coming CISOs to really sort of make sure that they knock it out of the park on their first, second, or third job?
Well, I would say, this is maybe almost cliche, but spend that first 60, 90 days just listening, learning. Yeah. Don't come in with your own agenda. But, after that 60 days, it is really, really critical for you to sit down and spend a day of deep work on what are your strategic priorities and lay those out on paper. And then you can take that across to your team. Now you can get your team behind you. You can take those strategic priorities and what are the strategic activities that support those priorities? What are your KPIs? Laying that out up front as soon as you can, getting consensus around that is going to be the foundation to jump from into everything else you want to get done.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Plan, execute. So flipping it back for final last words. What are your final last words you want to leave with the listeners? And by the way, let them know where they can find you and how they can reach out to you if they want to get more information about the great work you're doing.
Yeah, I say my last words are just, it's a great profession. It's going through a lot of change right now, a lot of challenges, but lean into the change and focus on what you are able to have an impact on. I think that does wonders. Build a network, build community. And where can you find me? Probably LinkedIn is probably the best place right now.
Okay, sounds good, my friend. Shannon, it's been truly a pleasure. And hopefully maybe in 4 or 5 months, we'll have you back again to see where you're going and how your career is going.
I would love it. Thanks for the invitation, Eric. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. You've been listening to Life of a CISO. We've interviewed Shannon on this great episode. Put some of these things into practice: communication, leadership, and connecting with your team members. And we'll see you next week on Life of a CISO.